Good evening and welcome to this episode of Beef Tips and Gravy. I'm John Houston, Director of Business Services for ProTrition Feed. Thank you for joining us this evening. I am excited this evening to introduce our guest, Mr. Charles Hord, who is with the Tennessee Cattlemens Association. I believe the official title will be Executive Director. Am I correct on that? The Tennessee Cattlemens Association. We certainly appreciate you being with us to talk a little bit about the beef industry and about what the Tennessee Cattlemen's Association is involved in and the way that you really actively help the beef producers in Tennessee. So thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
First thing, just tell our audience just a little bit about the Tennessee Cattlemen's Association, maybe the mission of the Tennessee Cattlemen's Association, and kind of what the history is of the organization.
Sure. So our mission is really just to act on behalf of cattle producers in Tennessee, whether that's lobbying on their behalf, educational activities, or just in general, working with media to try to put forth a good story about what our cattle producers are and what the beef industry is as well. So, that's what we do. We work for cattle producers. We were founded in 1985, a little bit of history, when the pork producers and the cattlemen split. So there used to be a Tennessee Livestock Association, and then they split. And so in 1985 was kind of when we went out on our own, and that's how we've been operating since.
And so, Charles, I know you've been with the Tennessee Cattlemen's Association a great number of years. How long have you been with them?
Yeah, gosh, almost 15 years now. It's kind of hard for me to even kind of think about that.
So during that time, what are some of the things, I guess, legislatively that you've been involved in, and some of the work that's been done by the Tennessee Cattlemen's Association to assist and help our beef producers?
Yeah. So it's kind of funny because a lot of the issues that we worked on then are the issues that we were working on 30 years ago, or kind of some of the same issues we're working on now. Both, we work more at the state level, but we also do trips to D.C. once a year too, and work on the federal level. But at the state level, we're dealing with changes to Tennessee. We all know about the urbanization and kind of a different mindset of some of the people in the state. And so those issues pop up every now and again, whether it's an animal welfare organization trying to implement some guidelines for how livestock's raised on the farms. We have dealt with that at the state level as well as the federal level. Any kind of what we feel like is maybe overreach by environmental groups, or even the Tennessee Environmental Services. Those guys will sometimes, we feel like, overreach in terms of what their authority should be on how cattle are raised, maybe how we raise them in environment with access to creeks and rivers and things like that. So those issues are always out there. Occasionally we'll have a member of our General Assembly will have a wild hair. There was one a few years ago where he thought we needed to identify all of our livestock with brands. And we just had to educate. It was really, once we talked to him, he kind of understood that. It really didn't make a lot of sense in Tennessee, especially when you're talking about sheep. You can't brand a sheep, right? So those things pop up, and unfortunately, some of them will pop up again. And I've actually got a few things with me I'm going to mention. There's a lot going on downtown right now, like some issues with animal disease, and there's unfortunately, a lot of stuff going on right now with livestock disease outbreaks and things like that, and other issues that we're just trying to. Sometimes we nip stuff in the bud, and sometimes we try to be a little bit more proactive.
Well, I know a lot of the issues that have been worked on over the years. The Tennessee Cattlemen's Association certainly has had a great influence on the impact that has been made at the legislature dealing with these issues, and most all have had positive outcomes for our producers, and we appreciate that very much. But you mentioned some of the things that are going on now. Why don't you transition just a little bit into some of that stuff, if you will, that goes on and that you're working with now?
Yeah. So I'm going to look down at my notes just a little bit to remind me, but one of the big things that's going on now is the Farm Bill. A lot of your folks may be familiar with it, but if not, every 5 years there's a new Farm Bill that comes up, and there's a whole lot of pieces to the federal Farm Bill. About 3/4 of it is the nutrition title, they call it, the SNAP benefits, the food stamps, that kind of thing, and that's what the urban elected officials are more interested in, and then our rural folks and the folks with the livestock associations are interested in some of the livestock issues, whether it's funding for conservation programs or disaster relief programs, or funding for research for colleges and universities that are looking for ways to improve what we do on our farms. And so that is being negotiated right now. It'll be implemented in 2023, or we hope it will, if it's not delayed somehow. And so there's just a lot of discussions in DC on that. For the Cattlemens Association, and really for our National Cattlemen's Association that we work with closely, one of the big issues with them is animal disease outbreaks, and so they're lobbying for additional funding for a foot and mouth disease vaccine bank. That's been kind of their big push in the Farm Bill. They would like to see more funding for that. We have been very fortunate we haven't had a foot and mouth disease outbreak in, I guess, a little over 100 years now in the U.S., but we are seeing it pop up around the world, really quite a bit. It's in South America right now. It pops up in Africa and Asia, and so we know that virus is circulating out there. And if it did hit the U.S., the impact on our livestock sector would it's hard to even imagine how it would shut us down. Right. So, if that vaccine bank could get funded, or at least some additional funding, that would be a way that maybe if we were able to catch it soon and get these vaccines in some of these animals, maybe we could keep it from really shutting down our industry as a whole, like it has, when it hit Great Britain about 20 years ago. Exactly. It really, they had to euthanize millions of animals, and it really cost them billions and billions of dollars, and theirs is just a fraction of our industry. So that's a big deal right now. Unfortunately, WOTUS is back in the news, the waters of the United States. That was an Obama-era rule where they kind of increased the authority of the Environmental Protection Agency over stock ponds or even wet weather conveyances on your farm, where they said they have authority to regulate those. And obviously, we as a livestock association, you guys were very involved with Absolutely. That as well, pushing back on those rules. And we did push back, and the Trump administration rolled a lot of those back. But now with the new Biden administration, they're putting forth some of those old rules. So once again, we're working with our National Cattlemen's, and we're issuing some comments as well on it, just saying, this is an overreach. This isn't what we do. We know how to care for our land. We've been doing it for hundreds of years. But those rules are being written, I guess, and implemented now, but there's also a court case that's being discussed. If the Supreme Court takes it up, that could ultimately impact how much authority the EPA has. So there's a lot of, I guess, moving pieces now on WOTUS as well. I'll talk a little bit about some vulture stuff that's popped up here lately. The black vulture issue, unfortunately, we've had them on our farm attacking
Absolutely.
Newborn calf. A lot of people have. It seems like it's getting to be more and more of an issue every year. We hear more and more about it. It used to be a Middle Tennessee issue, it seems like, and now we're hearing about it in East and West Tennessee as well. And it's really a tough issue as I've learned more about it. So they're protected under the Migratory Bird Act, which is an international treaty, right, with Canada and Mexico. So trying to get anything done when you're dealing with an international treaty that I think is negotiated every 10 years makes it really hard to get something done. But there are some efforts now. We're very fortunate. Representative Rose and Representative Desjardins out of Tennessee have kind of stepped up and have taken some leadership on that. They know it's an issue for us. And our Senator Haggerty as well is kind of trying to collect some information to see maybe we can do something to have them deemed overpopulated, or something to have them deemed a nuisance, and in that respect maybe would allow us to do some efforts to, they did something with the cormorants a long time ago, 20 years ago, when they were deemed overpopulated because they were impacting a lot of the fisheries up north, right. And they were deemed overpopulated, and they had some funding to do things like destroy nesting sites and things like that because there were too many of them. And I think we're there with black vultures as well. And so there's some work being done in DC right now. I'm hoping maybe something can happen with a black vulture.
That's certainly a large problem in our state. Yeah. And one good thing is we have great representation that's working on that in Congress, especially you know as well as I do, especially Representative Rose knows agriculture, knows the cattle business, and certainly that would be that's a positive with these gentlemen working on that.
Yeah.
Let me say too, Charles, you know, in our state, I say this about every video, but we are so fortunate in Tennessee to have the organizations in agriculture. We are a tight-knit group in agriculture, especially the livestock-related groups,
Yes.
and also business and industry that support those livestock groups, not least of which ProTrition Feed and Tennessee Farmers Co-op, but certainly our competitors that support the Cattlemens Association and other livestock groups. We have a fantastic, in my opinion, the best extension service in the country. We have great agents. We have great leadership out of our land grant institutions. And so how does TCA work in conjunction with all these groups? Because I know that you do,
Yeah.
and because of that, we're able to have some great success in the livestock industry.
Well, yes, and I didn't, you know, being in Tennessee, this is all I've ever known, right? I've known Tennessee Farmers Co-op, and I know I can call you and the Farm Bureau and, you know, all the extension services in the Institute of Agriculture at UT. When I go to other states, and I talk to my counterparts, I realize they don't always have those relationships in place, and they don't always push the same way. And so it's really, we're very fortunate to be able to do that, because, you know, Tennessee Farmers Co-op has for a very long time supported the Cattlemens Association in really more ways than I can even probably think of right now. But, you know, we have events we put on every year, whether it's our annual meeting or district meetings, and you guys have always been there supporting it. Really, as much as anything, it's just is communicating with one another, right? I mean, you guys know what we're concerned about. We usually know what issues you guys are working on and engaged in. And, you know, when you can all, you know, talk to each other like we do and just say, you know, what are we going to do about this? How are we going to attack it? And, you know, be unified, whether we're going to the Capitol or even if we're talking to our elected officials, you know, on the federal level, say, you know, this is an issue for agriculture in Tennessee. What can we do? And when they see Tennessee Farm Bureau, they see the Tennessee Cattlemens Association, they see the co-op, they see all these other groups working. It's pretty unique, I think, in around the country that we're able to work so closely.
I certainly think that's the case, and obviously I'm proud to be a part of that Tennessee agriculture network, if you will, that we have. In particular in the livestock area. Just a few more questions. One of the things that I wanted to ask you in Tennessee when it comes to beef production, let our audience know just how important that is to the Tennessee economy.
It is. It is. So a lot of people don't realize or appreciate that agriculture is still the #1 industry in Tennessee. Now, there's been talk that with the new Ford plant and some of the investments that maybe manufacturing would surpass agriculture. But today, agriculture still is the #1 industry in Tennessee, and especially for our rural areas. You know, that is really the driver for you know, a lot of the economies in the rural counties in Tennessee. And livestock, the cattle production, beef production, is either the #1 or the #2 or sometimes the #3 sector in agriculture. So we kind of rotate between poultry and soybeans and beef cattle production in terms of which one is the largest in the state. But I will maintain and have always maintained that beef cattle is pretty unique because we have so many producers, almost 40,000 producers raising cattle on their farm. Normally, you know, a 25, 30 head operation is pretty normal in Tennessee. And it's in every county, and it's a driver because those farmers are, you know, able to sell those calves, and they're putting that money right back into their local economy, whether they're buying products at the co-op or from their local tractor dealer, or, you know, anything else. That money rotates again in that local economy, which we don't always see in some of these other industries. So, you know, I think we're fortunate that, especially with the governor we have now, that he appreciates the importance of agriculture in Tennessee. He's invested money in agriculture in Tennessee, in the livestock sector specifically. You know, he has put money from some of the COVID funds into increasing our processing capacity for producers that want to process and sell their meat locally, and that has really helped our industry because we learned during COVID it's not always great when you have rely on these large packing plants out west somewhere. If we can bring some of that industry back in Tennessee and just as we mentioned, keep that money in the local economy, it all helps.
Absolutely. So a couple of other questions, Charles, before we wind this segment up. Talk just a little bit about the TCA Cattle Business, and even your newsletter that you email on a weekly basis, because I find myself going to those for a lot of information. That's where I actually try to get some local market news and also what's really going on. And also in the magazine, I find out a lot about some of our purebred seed stock producers and some things like that, sales that they're having. So talk just a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, I would tell your viewers out there, if you're not a member of TCA, I hope you will consider joining us. It is $50 a year annually to join. You get our magazine, the Tennessee Cattle Business, which I do feel, I may be a little biased, but I do feel it's a really good magazine for cattle producers and really those involved in livestock. We get some really good input from our partners at UTIA. You know, the extension folks write some great articles. We have other articles from other contributors, and that's a monthly magazine that folks will get if they join. And you even don't have to be a member to sign up for our email update. It's a weekly Monday memo we send out every Monday. You can do that on our website, tncattle.org, and it's just a way, a newsletter that we can do every Monday that kind of can very timely information or update on what's going on in the state that people can kind of see and catch up with what's going on. So if you're a cattle producer, I hope you'll join. If you're a business, if you're selling cattle or equipment or seed stock or anything else, I hope you maybe would consider advertising with us, because I do feel like people look at it and appreciate it, and it's a good way to get your product out there.
Well, it's great information. And so if someone wants to become a member, can they find that information on the website, or get what's the contact information to if someone wants to become a member?
Yeah, that's probably the easiest way to do it. Is the tncattle.org is our website, and you will see the Join Now tab in the corner. And you can also, get on there and see a little bit more about who we are and what we do too. I feel like we're working on behalf of our industry, and it will be good for anybody interested in beef cattle to be a member of us.
Absolutely. Well, Charles, thank you so much for being here today. As we wind this up, I would tell our audience, if you are not a member of the Tennessee Cattlemen's Association and you are a beef producer, I would encourage you to check into that. It is well worth the dues, if you will. It's well worth the time and effort that you could put into that, because the Cattlemen's Association works every day to support you as a beef producer. And if you have questions about the cattle industry, about products that serve cattle producers, please see the folks at your local farmers co-op. And thank you once again for joining us this evening.